devlog number 9, I believe. So one thing I haven't been showcasing is like the IAC for my application, which is like the infrastructure as code. And then for those of you who don't know, infrastructure as code is just like a way of being able to define, well, your infrastructure as code. And what that means in like layman's terms is if you have like a bunch of infrastructure in the cloud or a bunch of services that you're using, a lot of times you can define those in code and then spin them up on demand and then tear them down on demand. And it's very, very good for like a lower level environment, like a dev environment, because it allows you to, test stuff, deploy stuff, and then tear things down so you're not spending money on resources that are just kind of left up and running. So I basically wrote these like NPM scripts to do that. The normal way of doing this would probably be by using something like Terraform or like CloudFormation template to define all your resources. But because I'm a developer and more developer focused, I kind of went about it by just like interacting with the different platforms that I'm using APIs and then making API requests to tear things down and spin things up. And I did it in like a NPM script. So I'm going to kind of just showcase that here. It's kind of a little more behind the scenes, but in case anyone is interested in seeing this and just for my own records, I guess. So yeah, basically there's this alias that you can run to spin up my entire application for the dev environment. And you can see that in this package.json file, I've defined a bunch of these like aliases, which are just like aliases that you can reference for running this script. And there's a bunch of different things here. So my entire application as it stands right now consists of like Docker Hub for hosting images, DigitalOcean for deployments and like cloud hosting, Auth0 for authentication, and Stripe for payment. So I created these aliases that allow you to either spin them up or tear them down like incrementally if you wanted to. Like if you just wanted to spin up Stripe resources, you could do that. If you just wanted to spin up Docker Hub, you could do that, and so on and so forth. And they're categorized also by environment. So right now I only have a dev environment, and then this environment will be deployed to automatically, like whenever I merge my code, because I set that up in my GitLab YAML files, which is like a whole other separate topic of deployments. But just know that there's going to be 3 environments most likely. Currently, we only have a dev environment, but I have these aliases in place for like staging and prod once I get to that, like if I ever wanted to control the infrastructure for those. So I'll go ahead and run this command here. I'm just going to spin everything up. So it's npm run qwicki create dev. And what this will do is it should go through programmatically and basically begin to spin stuff up in the order that I know it needs to be spun up in. And this was done with a lot of trial and error of like one going in and manually doing all this stuff and then figuring out how I could do it programmatically. So like as you can see right now, I added logging as well, where it's going to go through, it's going to create a bunch of Docker Hub repositories to host my images. And then it's going to attempt to push like these dummy images to the repositories once they're ready. So it'll keep doing this on like a polling loop until the repositories are ready. And then these dummy images are used to trigger deployments to DigitalOcean. And that's just because it's kind of necessary to do that. It's kind of like a little minor workaround. So they're like super lightweight images that you can push. So what's it doing here? So yeah, it's trying to like create the repositories and then it's fetching the tags. And then when it finally has the tags, or it's pushing the images and then it's fetching the tags to confirm that it does indeed have these images there. So it knows like, hey, do not proceed on to the next step until this process is done. So it's doing that for my front end, back end, and some other back end kind of stuff that I set up. Okay, so all the Docker Hub stuff is created. Then it's going to go into DigitalOcean, and then this is the cloud hosting environment that I'm using. It's kind of like AWS or Azure, but it's more of like the developer-friendly cloud hosting provider. So right now I'm going through, I'm creating a project, creating the apps that I want. It's like, outputting the IDs. It's going to look for the live URL, but it takes a little bit of time to find the live URL. So what it's doing is it's going to retry in 5 seconds, attempt 1 of 10. So there's some stuff that's like polling where it needs to wait for the thing to be ready. And then when it's ready, it'll proceed on to the next step. What else we got here? So this is just creating some apps in DigitalOcean so that it can host my applications. Like I have some different microservices like front end, API, game server, and then like social server, I think are the 4 ones I created. This could be whatever. This would be like specific to whatever your app logic is. So the thing that's going to take the longest here is going to be the database cluster. So I'm creating a database cluster now that I have my apps created. So now I can create a database, and I can connect the database to those apps, but the database takes a while to spin up. So it's going to get hung here on this log at the bottom, and it will just keep kind of doing this every 60 seconds. It's going to check to see if the state of the database is ready. And if it is indeed ready, it'll proceed on to the next steps. I'll probably edit this part out because it's going to take a few minutes to do this. So yeah, my IAC script did successfully run, and I can verify that by coming into either any of the platforms that I deploy with, like Auth0 or Stripe, or in this case, I can look at DigitalOcean, and I can see that my applications have indeed been spun up in the cloud. So we have 4 applications, one for my front end, and then 3 for some like back end stuff, and then a database as well. And then all of those IAC scripts that I had will also get the database to allow these applications to connect to it. So if I was to like click into like one of the domains, we can see that it's got a placeholder page right now, which is telling me to please trigger an actual deployment. And that's just because I tore down everything from scratch, and this is like the first time I'm deploying to this, if that makes sense. But normally this would have my actual like front end application being hosted here. So if I wanted to like go and actually trigger the deployment, I would have to kick off a merge request that essentially just triggers the deployments via GitHub Actions pipeline. So as we can see, I've got some checks here which run on each of the like microservices I have. So in this case, they're all passing, they're all good to go, just like some formatters and stuff. And I'm gonna go ahead and approve. Well, I can't approve this because I was the one introducing these changes, but I'm essentially gonna bypass the merge rule, which is preventing me from merging this because it says I need approval. But obviously I can't approve my own work, so there's a quick little workaround, which is to just bypass merge request rules. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that and just merge this, confirm merge. But normally, if you had like multiple people on a team, you would be getting approval from somebody like that's reviewing your code and stuff. So I just merged that into main. So now this code that was a part of this merge request or pull request is now part of the main branch, and I have these like actions that will kick off on this event. So whenever a merge request happens into main, I have a CICD pipeline that kicks off to deploy my applications or my microservices. So it will only deploy or kick this off per microservice if you made changes to that microservice. So like for example, if I just made changes to the backend API, it would just run this one and it wouldn't run any of these ones. But since this is a first time full scale deployment of my entire application, all of these are running. So if I was to like drill into one of these, I could see the jobs and the stages that are running. So in this case, it's the same for all of them, but we have this like stage or job that's being kicked off here. And it's essentially publishing my image to Docker Hub. So I have an image, like an artifact that gets created, and I'm building it and then pushing it to Docker Hub so that it sits in a Docker Hub hosted environment in case you ever need to reference those images. And then it will take that image and it should trigger the deployment like with that image or from that image. So it's telling, hey, DigitalOcean, go to Docker Hub and then pull the latest image because there's a new image there for you for deployment. So it's kicking off that process right now. And then if this is green, then we can assume that it is indeed employed or deployed, sorry. And it would be the same for all of these other ones. So if I was to look at all of these other ones, so these should all hopefully come back green. And if that's the case, then I'll be able to verify that here in DigitalOcean. Okay, so all of the workflows finished running, or the actions finished running. So the deployment should have completed, and we can go ahead and verify that by going to DigitalOcean. And I can just check these URLs to see if there's anything live. So like for example, if I wanted to check my API server, I could just click this domain or this link, and we can see that, yeah, there is an API endpoint that's returning some data, which just says welcome to the qwicki API, which I just know that's my default route. And then if I wanted to look at something a little more user-friendly or easier on the eye, I could look at the front end. I could click that, and then there we go. There's my application. So it's spun up, it's in the cloud. This is publicly accessible. I mean, I'm going to tear this down before this video goes out, but yeah, so everything did successfully deploy. And once again, just to recap, I wrote these little npm scripts that I can run locally, and I can even run them in like GitHub Actions if I wanted to, but I just choose to do it locally. And it's essentially spinning up and tearing down my entire infrastructure for the dev environment, and in the future for the staging and production environments for my application. And that's just good because it provides repeatability so that I can like step away from my project for a few months if I need to, or a few weeks, and then just tear everything down and spin it back up without having to worry about like all the specific configurations of everything. And it also saves me money because I don't have to sit here with these, DigitalOcean instances spun up for months at a time if I'm not using them. So it's just kind of being like a good steward of your resources, and it just saves you money, and it's just an all around good thing to have. So it's always good to, if you can, like get your infrastructure like as infrastructure as code as fast as possible or as soon as possible. So that's pretty much it for me. Yeah, so hopefully next I'll be working on the actual like multiplayer netcode logic. So stay tuned for that, I guess. See ya.